Amazing podcast, and we're back, y'all. What's going on, CG? How's your Sunday going, baby?
Happy to be here, man. I made some briskets this weekend and went over and hung out with my good friend Sean McDowell yesterday and his family, and got to sit down and talk some shop, talk some football, talk school and UIL and all that good stuff, man. And seems like there's a lot of optimism coming from from he and his coaching staff and things like that about what's to come. Not only with UIL, sanctioned extracurricular activities, but you know schooling. So it was positive. It was all good. And in saying that, man, today is a very, very nice lazy day where it's raining. I love the rain. I love the darkness, and I love to combine the both and sit in a room and do nothing but sleep, respond to nobody's text messages, and go back to sleep again. So John,
Hey,
you got me out of bed, man. So you're the lucky one, brother.
hey, I hear that, man. It was definitely one of those for me. Like yesterday, it even started yesterday, where I was basically just like, you know what? I went out, got me a new bass. It was just,
Oh, nice. Did you really?
yeah, man. I finally went ahead
What'd you
and
end up getting? Talk to us about it.
yeah, so I got me a this is an Ibanez SR 300.
Oh, very nice. Very
So
nice.
I spent time, like, I don't know, I've been looking for like over a month, actually longer than that, because I knew the bass that I was using was basically, it was a bass from Wish. I got that bass, and the bass was $73. Like, I was just like, I don't know if I'm gonna really pick this thing up or not.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I
That's I
just
mean
get something quick and easy.
that's the thing though, man. Like I can tell you when I bought my turntables and all that stuff in 2005, um I was looking for something to just kind of get into the game and kind of get into the game cheap. And when you use turntables right, turntables are an instrument. Um
Right.
so I went looking at mixers and stuff like that and amplifiers and whatnot, and you can spend money on a lot of that stuff and run up a tab real quick. And I knew I was always going to have turntables in some regard because I love them. But you can get in and you can get a cheap Newmark turntable or something like that and spend a couple $100, or you can start going for the Cadillacs that are tried and true, like Technique 1200s, where you're going to spend right at about $1,000. That was the price back then. And that's exactly what I did, man. I mean, and I kind of a cool story. The way I got my turntables was when Hurricane Katrina happened, I got a call from a mutual friend of someone who had fled the city, and all they had was turntables, speakers, and amplifier stuff that they could sell for money. And that's how I got my two Tech 1200 turntables, man. That guy lived in the middle of New Orleans, and he had just bought those turntables about a month prior. They came in the boxes and everything, still had the factory styrofoam and all that, man. And we met, and I picked it all up from him, man. And my Tech 1200s have a dope story. They fled the hurricane from Katrina, and now they're here safe in Houston.
Nice, nice. We got to get you and Earl on a podcast. You and Clee, get y'all.
Who's that?
You and Clee Sean, get y'all on
Oh
there. Get
man,
y'all
me
to,
and me and Cleishon text all the time, bro.
yeah, man. Man, all right. So Mike, it wasn't able to join us today. To the audience, if you're not watching, it's just me and CG on today. He has some things going on, and Sundays just are, sometimes they can be a little bit taxing time wise, because that's our day to kind of get ready for the week, that sort of thing. But we were able to get on here today because me and CG, we just being lazy today. So it's one of the things we were talking about in the pre-show, Chris, was about everything that's going on in Portland. And it's kind of interesting. One of the things that is taking place right now is Trump, the Trump campaign, I should say, not administration, is putting out a bunch of content about this is what it's going to look like if Joe Biden becomes president, which is, as we were laughing, it's funny because this is what it looks like and Trump is president. So what is the angle there? Like, what angle are you searching for? And I'm pretty sure they're convincing some people on their team that this is the, truth of the matter. This is what is, really going to look like if Biden does this. But I don't think you're going to win over any moderates. You're definitely not going to get anybody from the left to believe that this is what it's going to look like differently than Trump. But is this a precursor? Like, is this, let's say they're right and this is what it looks like under Biden. What's to tell us that this isn't what it's going to look like under Trump for the next 4 years? Is this a precursor for the next four?
I mean, here's the thing though, John, and for like I remember when we first started doing the podcast a while back, and we were telling people that what you were seeing coming out of this administration was propaganda, and a lot of it started off really, really softly, really, really, really softly. Things like, yes, John's cap is black right now, but it's got a little bit of a white in it, so technically it's not thoroughly black. And then it just started to, that initial questioning of truth, trying to put doubt into someone's head to maybe, hey, what you're seeing isn't really what you think it is. And it's been beta tested and beta tested and beta tested and beta tested. And now we're here to where he's showing you images on commercials that are going on in real world time right now, every day in certain sectors of the US, Portland for one of them, the main one of them. And they're telling you that hypothetically, this is what you might be able to look forward to if Joe Biden becomes president. Well, you don't have to look for that in 6 months to a year. You can see that right now. And that's them trying to control that message. It's pure propaganda. And I can only imagine that this is going to continue to get worse, as these next few months go by. I mean, what are we? We're 3-4 months from the election right now, correct? November?
Yeah.
Like this is
it's less than 4.
That's the other thing I'll tell you is, I mean, this does not seem like an election year. And I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or not,
right?
But it does not seem like an election year where the airwaves are saturated. The TV is saturated with commercials. I get Facebook stuff, but I think even Facebook has largely banned political ads, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Twitter has done the same.
Yeah, they limited them. It's hard for us to even get ads out, and they make you state who paid for the ad in the ad. And there's a bunch of hoops that they make you jump through for political ads. If it's political, it goes through an extra level of scrutiny.
So, in saying that, I think what's happened is this, and this is going to work in Democrats' favor, I believe, because right now, when you're not seeing political ads that you just kind of inherently see throughout your daily activities, you have to physically want to go seek them right now and find them. Am I correct in that assumption, John?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what's happening is you're taking what's normally a very aggressive process by Republicans, drilling home this message that Democrats can't govern, that they are anti-American, that they are coming to take your freedoms, that they are against the Second Amendment. Basically, the message that they've carried for the last 40 years. And they've always done a really, really good job executing that to some extent, especially when it comes to 4-term election years where they potentially may lose to a Democrat. They've always been able to kind of fulfill that into 2 terms. Well, I think what's happened now is I think the Biden team largely realized that, and they said, you know what, we're going to sit back and we're going to let maybe some of the special interest groups publish things like the Lincoln Project, so to speak, right? And continually attack. We're not going to put anything out there where we can step in our own, we're going to let people continue to experience what they're experiencing right now, what they're seeing right now. And the only way that the Trump campaign and the administration can combat that is to do it through propaganda, because it's all a lie. What is happening right now, this is, man, this may be the only time since September 11th, World War II, maybe Vietnam, that everyone's life changed at the exact same point and moment in time.
Right. That, as Mike would say, the collective shared experience.
That the collective shared experience. And I think what has happened is people have looked at this and they've realized we just absolutely we don't like this. We do not like this. And again, so what Biden's done is they've just sat back and they've said, you know what? We're going to let you continue to experience what you're experiencing right now. And I think that message is going to pivot once he chooses his running mate, which is probably going to be a minority Black woman. And my bets are still on Susan Rice, especially because they put out a message this week saying that they wanted to end the quote unquote forever wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Well, you need someone that's going to be strong on foreign policy, and that's what Susan Rice brings to the table. So, and I think for the world to take us seriously again, we're going to have that individual who can have those conversations. And it's probably going to be Susan Rice. But I think that message is going to pivot here probably in the next 30 days, maybe not even that long. And I think they're going to start putting out a message of kind of along the lines of what we're talking right now. Everything that you've experienced over the past 4 to 6 months has happened to everyone all at one time, collectively, indiscriminately. Is this what you really want going forward for the next 4 to 8 years? And it's probably going to be as simple as that. And that's all they're going to have to say. And I think people are going to look at themselves and they're going to say, you know what? I'm out of work. My family members died from COVID. I've got a family member who may have long-term effects from COVID. My kids can't go to school. I'm balancing work. I'm balancing education. I may have had to take a minimum wage job just to put food on the table right now. My unemployment benefits have started to end. Nah, this isn't what I want right now. And I think it's as simple as that, John. And I think that's why Biden's team hasn't been negative to any effect by putting out truly negative political ads, because that's where the Trump campaign would shine at, because all they're doing is producing propaganda anyway. So by trying to play in that aspect of the campaign with them, you're playing into their strong points, because that's all they have. That is the last card in the deck for them to play.
Absolutely.
And I think Biden and them are smart enough to realize that, and that's exactly why they're not doing it. And you can look at the polls, man. I mean, the polls themselves are. I don't know how right they are, John. Hang on. I don't know how right they are, but I will tell you that even if they are 10% margin of error, it still looks like a blowout.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that people, and this we had this conversation before, is people are looking at the polls and saying, well, this is what happened before. We've seen that story, and this is what I'm this little bit of a data nerd, and so I love like the 538 podcast where they go over all of these ins and outs and things like that. And 2016, even though some people did say that it's it was going to be a ridiculous, blowout, like they had like a 97% chance of winning, 538 didn't. And if you look at I would probably say, maybe you could say partisan polls, I guess, maybe. But if you look at the data beyond those, I don't know what you want to label, let's just say partisan polls. The data was pretty accurate in 2016 on the polling. There was some misses for sure. But whenever you start taking in the aggregate and you start looking at all these other factors of the polls, they were pretty accurate. And it's what we just saw we saw the downside of the poll win, which was always an option.
Yes.
That's why it wasn't 100% chance. So when I look at this year's polls and I start looking at the polling data, one thing I do hold back a little bit, because this is not a regular year, right? Like, it's just not a regular year for politics. So the polling is going to be wildly different than it was in past, let's say, quote unquote, normal election years. So it is definitely a high mark, but the early polls tend to have an opportunity to reverse. Like if you look at Obama and McCain's poll, like it literally was like McCain was up, and then all of a sudden it was like fell off a cliff, and then Obama went straight up. And I think that was probably around the time Sarah Palin joined the crew. Um, but so I don't hold the polls to an exact standard and saying that, oh, Biden is, I think it was a 15-point lead, right? Which is kind of crazy to imagine, a 15-point lead. But I think right now this year, and I'll take the lead of, the serious poll nerds at 538, and I say that lovingly, when they say that the math for this year is way up in the air because there's usually not this much movement. But you have so many things going on with COVID changes, kids out of school, like you say, the unemployment, all of that. It's not the same formula, I guess you could say, um, that it would be in normal years. So I think it's going to be difficult. And I do agree that this is definitely one of those Biden just sit back. And I was having a slight discussion on Facebook kind of about this, is that the Trump administration is starting to make moves because I think they tried going a certain route and it just wasn't working. They got rid of Brad Parscale, who was the campaign manager. They moved him to another position, which basically he got fired. So now he's working in a different position, but he got fired as campaign manager. And so in moving him, I think they kind of conceded to the point that our strategy isn't working, because you don't replace your campaign manager if your strategy is working, right? Like who does that? And so I think this is why you actually see some of these moves happening that Trump is doing. He just signed an executive order on drug prices. All the stuff that's going on with China, like the taking over the consulate, all these sort of things. Like he's making these moves because I think he realizes he can't live off his old wins anymore. Like he can't keep saying economy, jobs, low Black unemployment, which I still can't get anybody to tell me what specifically he did to lower the Black unemployment, because that was another just riding the wave sort of scenario. But he can't play that old track. The old track doesn't work anymore, right? Like you can't tell people I brought jobs back and I've changed this and I've done this, and then 40 million people are out of work. Like that doesn't add up.
That's what happens, man. Keeping on the theme of musical instruments, whenever you own a really good turntable and you own expensive records, what you do is you buy a stylus that is going to give you maximum sound, right? If you're an audiophile, you're going to buy something that protects your investment long term. But eventually, as good as that music may sound, that needle's going to wear out and you're going to have to go buy another one. And that's quote unquote changing the tune. They have tried to change the tune in every way possible, to pander to everything outside of their base. And I don't think it's worked. So what's happened is now they've started to re-insulate themselves, and they're starting to have those conversations to try to hold on to what looks like an eroding base. They can say whatever they want about 90+% of Republicans that approve of X. That's all garbage. I think that number is probably somewhere in the 60 to 70% range, and I wouldn't be surprised if what I'm hearing, and Ted Cruz sounded the alarm not too long ago, and Abbott with this COVID-19 stuff has done a horrific job, I might add.
Yeah.
That even dyed in the wool Republicans are questioning. But I think that they're starting to realize along Ted Cruz's message that, hey, it was a competitive race with Beto O'Rourke, who came in and I think finished higher than anyone else kind of pegged him or thought he was going to. If that was the benchmark and litmus test for Democrats, what are they going to do this time around? And I have to think, man, that they might be right. That they might. I wouldn't say that obviously everything is going to flip, but I think it's a large possibility. I mean, you look at the voices that have started to really kind of dominate the airwaves here in local politics, and it's Lena Hidalgo. It's why am I drawing a blank? What's the mayor?
Sylvester Turner.
Sri Kulkarni is now starting to, really kind of dominate because he's going to have a runoff race with Troy Nehls, here in Fort Bend County. So you're starting to hear those voices, and those voices are starting to be a little bit louder than Republican voices for the first time in a long time. But I think, again, that's because they're struggling with one unifying message, because the message itself is no longer central or even progressive. It is now hyper partisan all the way to the right-hand side. There's no in between. It's gone. So you have some of those individuals that truly don't believe in the things that the Trump administration is pushing, that are now starting to back off and say, wait a minute, this isn't the way I want to go with this. And I think Abbott is in that category. And I think that's largely why, a lot of donors and tried and true Republicans are really having issues with his response to this COVID-19 thing, because I have seen them basically say he has refused to stand up for our rights. And if they're feeling that way, there is a wedge and a large partisan divide that I don't think most Texans, surely most Americans, but most Texans aren't seeing right now, but it's happening behind the scenes somewhere. There is a large divide there somewhere. I'm sure
if you look at Abbott, remember and this is what we always say, and I want to make sure this point, I want you to continue though, but we always talk about team politics, and this is why team politics don't work, because Abbott came out and he basically had this whole thing about this lady who was, charged because she closed her beauty salon, and she ended up, ignoring the judge, and they gave her a chance, and she ended up going to jail. And then Ted Cruz went to get his hair cut over there. They did this whole thing, and this whole concept of you can't be charged or fined for not wearing a mask. No, I'm overriding that as governor. I'm not allowing that. And then all of a sudden, he does the same thing. And now if you're on a team, you were right there, you were writing for Abbott, and you were like, absolutely, that's my governor. Republicans, Democrats trying to, control our lives and blah, blah, blah. And then when he does it, what do you say? What do you do? What's your response when the same thing that you were just railing about is what your party does, your team does? Like, what's your response? And I think like just that team aspect, specifically with how Abbott, and normally it takes time for you to see these things happen, right? Like they do something and you have to wait for something to play out. But with COVID, like we saw how, partisan things got, and how Abbott made certain moves because it was like party line good to happen, sort of thing. And so anyway, I just wanted to make that point, just that you have to continue to pay attention to the team politics and what's going on. But continue, CJ. You were on a roll. My apologies.
Well, it's just, again, kind of keeping along the lines of that. I mean, I look at Trump's cell phone here recently with him wearing the mask, right, and him now advocating for that mask.
Another great example of team.
Another great example. And then I read something that conservative support for wearing a mask jumped to something like 53%, 56%. In support of it now. So if I look at that number in that 50s% range, I think that kind of goes along the lines with what I was saying earlier about true Republican support. Is there's still a base of individuals that are going to follow him, but that base has now shrunk.
Right.
I think that number is still somewhere probably in the 60s to 70s, which is drastically different from when he first took office, because that number was truly somewhere in the high 80s and low 90s. But I think those are all indications that has somewhat started to erode itself. And, again, I think what they've done for so long, for the last three, it feels so long, but it's only been 3.5 years. But for what they've done for this last 3.5 years is they have controlled the message purely by propaganda. It's all been a little bit of truth, but it's been largely lies. But there's been enough truth there
Right.
that you could debate it logically and question if it was really what was happening.
Right.
Those days are gone. That benefit of the doubt is gone. I think the media has finally started to figure out not to bite on every single thing he says and turn it into a soundbite and flip it. They largely ignored a lot of the things that he's done. Even Fox News is largely ignoring a lot of those things. But I think that base is eroding, man. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see all throughout the country is races that, we probably never thought were in play are probably going to be in play.
Well,
And
that's
we're going to
why
find out very soon.
yeah, by this time in the election, I think because it's such an odd year, we would have already had the Democratic National Convention, the Republican National Convention, right? It would have been a debate coming up here soon. Like we would have had these normal political, milestones, I guess you could say, that would be happening right now that just aren't happening because of everything that's going on. And so it feels like there's a longer amount of time until we get to the election, but it's not. Like it's about to hit August. Like next week we're entering August, and so that means August, September, October, and then election right at the beginning of November. So I think it's going to be real interesting to see Trump's move to the far right on this, on a lot of different things, not everything, but his move out there is normally what you would see at this time of them moving more middle, more to the center. And he hasn't been doing that. And so it's very interesting to see him just take that far stance instead of bringing it more to the middle, because that's been the tried and true way to win. But as much as they try to say that the left does identity politics, if you think the right doesn't use identity politics, you have completely not been paying attention. Identity politics has been born and bred in America since the jump. Like since the rip, America has been identity politics. So both sides do it, both sides use it. And that's definitely what Trump has been doing, the identity of being patriotic, right? Like he said that Biden looks stupid for wearing his mask, but now he says it's very patriotic, right? And people probably lap that up. They're probably just like, oh yeah, it's patriotic to do same thing that Biden was doing before. Now he's doing, but now somehow it's patriotic, right? So it's interesting to see where we are. I think the calculus is very difficult to determine what's going to happen in the next 3 months because we just don't know. But I know whenever I look at stuff like what's happening in Portland and I look at everything else that's been going on, I have no confidence that that Trump's America in 2021 and on is not going to continue to look like this or similar to this.
Mm-hmm.
So along those lines, we've also seen that one of the moves that Trump has made, and I'm quite interested in this from a geopolitical standpoint. I wish Mike was on. Mike has a good grasp of geopolitics here as well. But the moves with China and the consulate. So the Houston consulate was actually, there was a video that came out that said China was burning documents out in some barrels. And then there was another issue. I didn't catch the city, but another consulate here in America that was China's. America took it over. The U.S. took over that consulate. And now, if you're not familiar with the consulate is basically like foreign territory on our land, right? So if we're in our consulates in other countries, if you're an American and you arrive at that consulate, they cannot just go in that consulate and take you out. That's like extradition. And so then China responded and was like, all right, America, you need to get out of your consulate over here. And so they responded in that way. So it feels like early days. It's a little too early to, and well, let me not say it's a little too early. I haven't read up enough on all the ins and outs of what specifically is going on to fully know or give an opinion about where this is heading. But I can imagine that this is at the place right now where it's starting to escalate. And it kind of goes along with what we've talked about before, where we've started seeing other countries that normally aren't working together work together in a way that it seems very targeted in removing the U.S. dominance, specifically potentially wrapped around the strength of the dollar and taking that and bringing that down so it's not the default global currency, which I believe after World War One or so is when the dollar kind of became the global currency. And so we've had a strong run, and I don't think people realize that, like, if you just even look at America in the last few months, everything can change on a dime. And so if the dollar stops being the default global currency, you see a whole bunch of issues now arise just from an economic standpoint. But then if you start seeing other countries starting to team up, and I believe the last thing I saw was China and Iran, I believe, started working on some deal and some trade and things like that. And, Russia has been working with, I believe who was it, CG? Was it North Korea they were working with? I think
Yes.
so they were working with North Korea, and I believe they had some things going on with Japan. And there were some, just starting to see countries leave the US out. And so now, with everything that's been going on, we haven't seen much happen with Russian consulates since Obama had expelled, I think, like 18 or something after the election. But we see that they've taken over China's consulates, and now China shut down ours. CG, where do you think this may be going, and what's happening in this going forward? Where do you see this landing?
I mean, I think it's just it looks like it's just a continuation of all the jockeying that we've had with China, and them trying to take a hard line message. I think there was something else that came out not after that. I don't know if it was by his administration or maybe it was Troy Nels or something like that. But I think it's, you know what, I'm going to look for it real quick, but I think it was something along the lines of, here it is, I found it. Something along the lines of them engaging in espionage. Here it is right here. I'm going to read it real quick. It says, some of you have heard that the U.S. State Department report that the Chinese consulate in Houston was engaged in espionage and intellectual property theft of Americans. As a result, the Chinese consulate in Houston was ordered closed. I think it's important to remain mindful that the forced closure of this consulate is a result of the actions taken by the Chinese government and not Chinese Americans. And then it goes on to speak to Chinese Americans, kind of directly. But when I read that late last night, that looks to be the message that they're trying to carry forward right there is, well, this was a reactionary thing. This was something that we've been warning China about for years. They've continued to do it. And now we finally, quote unquote, called their bluff. I don't know what intel they may have, for as much as they've openly questioned the intelligence agencies in this country.
Right.
If they're going to try to justify something like that, I'm going to have a hard time believing it. So, but I think that looks along the lines of actually what they're kind of going with. And if you take that message and you look at the espionage and intellectual property theft portion of that, I mean, that's really what they've been saying has been going on for years, right? Which was initially why they sanctioned, or I'm sorry, why they tariffed and tried to engage China in a trade war, because they believed that there was intellectual property theft, correct?
Right.
So
Partially, that was part of it. Yeah, one of the pieces where they were still in IP.
So why are they trying to amplify that now, several months before the election in an election year? And I think they're just so desperate to try to gain traction on anything, especially because they look so weak on foreign policy to begin with. Nobody outside of people who pay attention to politics truly cares about this, I don't think. We have way too many other issues going on for them to try to amplify something going on with China, especially calling it the Chinese virus and the Wuhan virus. And, the kung fu virus or whatever else they're calling it. I mean, it just sounds like they just want to peddle in something just to be able to throw something else out there to see what sticks. I mean, I haven't, since they did it in the middle of the week. Have you heard anything else about this at all?
Not really. Just like the individual things where, Houston happened, and then it was actually San Francisco, and
Yeah.
then China, responded with us having to get out of Chengdu, and then it was like, okay, like it was like just lobbing things.
Right. Right.
So I think it was interesting of how forceful it was, and the way things kind of came out. It didn't seem like there was any real, I guess, facts behind it in terms of we have proof. Right now, granted, I always state that I don't know what the US government has in terms of intel because they're not going to release all that information out. Right. So understand that I'm operating here under the guise that there is potentially some more information, but the information that has come out was largely around the idea of them burning things and that considered potentially being some espionage that was happening. And so I don't know. Maybe maybe it's just me, but I think if you're a foreign government who has been, successfully stealing intellectual property for years, I don't think you just go out and buy barrels and burn them out in the public where you see people can see what you're doing. I understand that people do dumb stuff all the time, but I just have a hard time believing it's that cut and dry.
I think you're exactly correct. And I honestly, I think that was more diversion and probably a show than anything, because
Right.
I just have to believe that the Chinese consulate is not basic and stupid enough to just go outside and start a bonfire and burn it up. You know what I'm saying? Now
Exactly.
they also know that no one can come in there and take them out. But I have to think that instead of burning whole documents, they would have probably shredded those documents first and then burned them. It looks like they were just dumping stuff. So I think
Yeah,
that was
like they're just
probably
taking stuff and dumping it, and
that was a diversion more
it
than
could have
anything.
been blank reams of paper, right? Like, it definitely didn't seem like something. When I first saw the video, I was like, this seems odd. Like
Yeah.
if I'm trying to hide something, I'm not going outside to dispose of it. I can do that in the house,
Yes, correct.
right? So I know you can do it inside of a building. I don't know. I don't know. It just seemed very odd. And the story, whenever stories shape up so fast, like boom, this is what it is. I always just hold a little bit of an eye to it. Like, I don't know. And the first from the rip, what came out was, um, they're burning secret documents, of espionage. And I'm like, wow, like from that video, you can tell, from looks like across the
Mm-hmm.
street, 4 or 5 floors up, you can tell that they're like, this is espionage. Like, is that, so anyway, it was very interesting. And, they said that there was actually in the San Francisco consulate that there was actually, this is an article from CNN. They said that a Chinese scientist who had been hiding in the country's San Francisco consulate after accusations of visa fraud is now in U.S. custody, and also charged that Beijing has been using its diplomatic outposts to run an espionage network to steal
Mm.
intellectual property from businesses, universities, and research centers. And the researcher is Tang Wan, um, who said she was focusing on biology. Um, I don't know. It seems interesting. I don't think that it's far fetched that they have some. I mean, we have our our own espionage networks, throughout the world too. So I don't doubt that China has something going on. Um, but I don't know, accusations of visa fraud. Like, do you know how much fraud there is in the visa program?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's why, like, it falls weird to me because of the timing that it's an election year. I think this is another one of Trump's statements of being a hardliner against China. You know, there's so much visa fraud that's going on out there. You don't even you hear about DACA and illegal immigration, and most
Mhm.
people think DACA is only Mexican Americans or Mexicans that have come to America early and been born here, but it's not. I know a black dude from Europe who is a DACA recipient. So well, his son is. So it's a bunch of narrative stuff, and I just think there's something here. I don't know. We'll hold to see what else comes from this, but I definitely think something is going on here that we'll find out. I don't know. Maybe somebody else will write a book and tell us this. I got to tell you, I don't think people are really reading them.
It might be Don Jr.
Oh my God, dude! Did you see the Don Jr. book that's coming out?
Dude, I don't know. He's writing these thought provoking books like Nancy Drew used to write Hardy Boys. You know what I'm saying? There's 500 volumes of this thing. What was funny is it reminds me of do you ever, and I'm not gonna say it online, but if you ever watch the Dave Chappelle episode where he was the black white supremacist,
right.
And the black white supremacist goes to the book signing, and he's up there with 5 of his books, and every book is an alternate title of the exact same title. I promise you, John. I went and I was sitting there and I was looking at that right before I jumped on the podcast because that is exactly one of the times that art is imitating life and life is imitating art, whatever you want to call it. But it's hilarious to me, man. And yeah. I guarantee you that outside of him maybe putting his name on the forward or something like that, he has no idea what the hell is in that book.
I mean, come on, man. Like, let's just be real. All right. So his first book was Triggered. All right. So let me hold on. Let me give some context of why I'm going here. Right. So the new book is called Liberal Privilege: Joe Biden and the Democrats' Defense of the Indefensible. The very top of the book has a picture of Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, and it's a big like fire scheme. And then below that is like a little bit of a silhouette of Trump, and it kind of looks like it may be like a Mount Rushmore type thing, because it looks like a little bit of stone with an overlay of an American flag, right? But it's kind of faint. And then it's a picture of him down at the bottom, which is, in my opinion, it's terrible lighting. They could have picked a better picture, but I guess it makes him look strong. I don't know. So at the very, very top, the words say Donald Trump Jr., #1 New York Times bestselling author. Hold that thought. So his first book, Triggered: How the Left Thrives on Hate and Wants to Silence Us. And to your point about Chappelle, Joe Biden and the Democrats' defense of the indefensible. I'm more than likely he's talking about how the left thrives on hate and wants to silence it. And so it's probably more than likely a retread. But the interesting part is the part that's under his title, under his name: #1 New York Times bestselling author. CG, you remember how he became the #1 New York Times bestselling author?
You tell them, man. I think they broke campaign finance law to do it, didn't they?
The Republican National Committee, they bought like 100,000 books or something to that effect. So basically, they bought all those books. And because they bought them all, he was able to state that he was on the #1 bestsellers list because it works off of sales. But even the New York Times bestseller list put an asterisk on it and said that it came about from large purchases because they basically bought all the books, pumped it up. There's basically like a pump and dump scheme in stocks, pumped it up, and then really no one really bought the book. The numbers were very low outside of the RNC buying all of those books. So anyway, it's just, I find him to be absolutely funny because he can't be that dense. I've heard people talk about how, them as a whole, they're very aware of who they are and how they're perceived and stuff like that. But I don't think he can be that dense.
I think he absolutely is.
I mean, I'm an optimist, so I want to believe that he's smarter than he puts on. But when he comes out and says stuff like, Hunter Biden is living off of his dad's name, I'm like, but you're Donald Trump Jr. Like your entire life has been based on your dad's life, which has been based on his dad's life.
His
Like
dad hates him.
I don't get it, dude. I just absolutely don't get it. Like you can't be that ignorant. And to me, I feel like at best they know exactly what they're doing and they're just playing up, to grift here. Chris, um you put a spreadsheet that showed all the money that's going to their properties.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is the thing I've said for the longest. Like everybody up in arms about, all these other things with Russiagate and all that. And I think the Democrats should have went after the emoluments clause a long time ago. Like the dude and the family is just absolutely getting rich off of this. And I guarantee you, if you look at their profit since he became president, and if you look at how much new money has been coming from the government, I guarantee you they made millions, dude. Millions off of this. It's just like one huge grift. So
It absolutely is. And the daughter is the worst one out of all of them.
because she comes off as like this pure character.
And she doesn't. I mean,
but she's doing the same thing, like getting these patents from China and all this stuff in record time. Like this, when this is all said and done, and people look through like all the facts of all the stuff that was going on, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some people with a bunch of egg on their face that tried to defend what was going on. And this is really what's indefensible, is the fact that they're there for the American people. And I believe wholly that they're not. And it has nothing to do with, as they say, Trump derangement syndrome. It's like, if you just look at it, like you just objectively look at what's happening, you can tell that this is not about us. It's about him. Because if it was about us, he would never have went back and said, oh, well, I think, in terms of like gun violence, maybe we should get rid of some bump stocks. Maybe we should start looking at the magazine stuff. He's on a Republican ticket talking about people want to take away guns. They want to do this. But then all of a sudden, it becomes politically expedient that he does that a few years back. And he starts looking into it. Like when it becomes politically expedient and you can move with the water, you already know, like it's not about us, it's about his reelection. So what do you think is going to happen with this new relief plan? There's another $1,200 that's coming out.
Well, I don't know, but it sounds like, I mean, they absolutely put a price on what it means to be an American, and it's $1,200 with taxes taken out. So that's what they think of you.
Are they really taking taxes out of that?
I think so.
I didn't even try to get one. I was like, well, I phased out of the first one because of the rules that they had on it, and I was like, well, I'm not even.
Oh, I did. I mean, we did too. Too. But from what I understand, that was indeed the case, is that they took taxes out of it. So you didn't get a $1,200 check. I think you got a check for $1,157.
That's the price to be.
Plus postage, because as much as they hate the post office, they had to charge you that 32 cents or whatever it was. No, but in all seriousness, man, I mean, it looks like they're trying to pass something else from what I'm getting. But I mean, $1,200 is a joke, man. If you look what happened to that $1,200 up to that point, so you have to take them in kind of two different contexts. That $1,200 bailout came 60 days after, or maybe not even 60 days, maybe 45 days after individuals had been quarantined from their homes and stopped working. Most of those individuals are now 5 to 6 months into this thing. Another $1,200 check isn't going to do anything but piss a couple of people off, because it's not going to help them. It's going to be enough for them to do a few small things, but small enough that it's not going to solve any issues whatsoever. I mean, right. Absolutely. There's going to be another impending mortgage crisis that's going to come out of this, whether it be,
what was that, Manhattan, where we saw that it was like 10,000 apartments
Yeah.
where it became available for rent in July
Yep.
or June.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah, bro.
and here's the thing. Here's the thing. You know, those apartments aren't $900 to $1,200 a month to rent. You know, those apartments are $2,000 to $5,000 a month to rent. They're extremely expensive. I mean, if you equate that, that would be like living in, you know, a 300,000 or a 250,000 to a $500,000 home in the state of Texas. If you
Right.
put that into mortgage terms. So, I mean, I'm curious to see a lot of things out of this, man. I'm curious to see how many people try to move and get out of New York State just because it's just too expensive, which was a direct result of, you know, investors buying up properties and pushing rents up artificially. Jared Kushner being one of the largest.
Yeah. And
So,
that's the thing that
you know,
people don't look at Kushner for. I'm telling you, it's a big grift. Anyway, go ahead. I want to keep
so
going.
there's so many things that are going to domino out of this, man, that whatever they put forward is just going to be one big joke. I mean, because you like I said, John, you know, I'm looking at things like from what I'm reading. So I think they're going to put the cap minimum at $40,000, and then they're going to put it at, what is it, 40,000 to, is it 99,000 is the highest?
Last time it was 98, and that was for single, and 198 or 196 for couples. I
So
don't know what
there's
they're
a
gonna do now though.
so there's a range that you have to fall in. So basically, they're excluding certain Americans out of this thing just kind of by default, right? I mean, I get it, you know, but tax returns and income changes year after year, man. That income that made, you know, that person that made $250,000 last year might be making 75 right now. You know, I mean, that's a reality
Right.
that happens. Um, they need to just suck it up, go in there, cut that check, and you know, if you're gonna put a price tag on $2 trillion, you mean you might as well just make it five, you know, and give everybody some money. Um, because there's
Right.
very little difference in between the two. But I mean, I think it's going to be a farce, man, and I think it's going to be one last ditch effort. They're gonna send that money out to people. They're going to do polling directly after it,
Oh yeah.
and if those poll numbers don't jump in any way, shape, or form, um, the American people are on their own until next year.
Oh yeah. No, I think there definitely is a factor in this where the case is that this is for political purposes. Right, like they're all trying to get a win, right? Like the Democrats are looking at this and trying to get their piece in so they can get a win, and the Republicans are doing the same thing so they can get a win. And so I definitely think this is politically motivated because there is a strong stance against socialism on the right, right? And I don't think, you know, pulling this money together and giving it out to people is anything less than socialism, right? So for them to go back on that and, everybody accepting that socialist, idea of taking that check is what, your pops always say is, what does he say about the hungry belly or hungry mouth doesn't have morals or something like that. Um, so that one, that one from Big Jim is definitely one that sets and always remains true, but I think the main thing is, with this beyond the political aspect of it is, man, folks, they're talking about the extending the $600 unemployment benefit boost as well. So we'll see how that works, because if they don't do that, the 40 million or whatever the number is now of people who are out of work, they're not, I mean, their benefits are going to run out soon, right? Their benefits will run out before the election. Like if they don't do this now, those benefits run out before the election. Because if they went out in March or in April, you got 6 months and then those benefits
Yes,
run out. That's
yes,
pre-election. So
yes.
I don't think there's a chance that they don't extend this, because if they don't, it's pretty much a guarantee the Republicans lose in this election if the Democrats can prove that the Republicans are kind of at fault, quote unquote, like the Republicans are the reason why. If they can get that narrative across, they lose. If the Republicans can get the narrative across that we came in and saved, we saved America during this time of crisis, then I think they could spin this into something good politically. So I don't know. We'll see. The news is supposed to come out tomorrow on what the next stimulus bill is supposed to be. I like I said, I don't get one anyway, so I don't really pay attention into the all of the specifics of it. But we'll
So
see.
why don't you get one, John Bland? Are you un-American?
Because I make more money than the limit, but I make less than $1 billion. And so if you make $1 billion, you can get a whole bunch of money to help you out.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Right.
So that's the issue there. You got to be super rich or poor, and they'll help you.
There's no middle ground.
Yeah, in between.
You are on your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's one thing that I always say, man. I know you see John and I talk about it, but I'm proud of the both of us because we, those circumstances on the bottom end of that. I mean, we know exactly what that looks like, man. We've seen it. We grew up in it. The unemployment opportunities dwindling. For most of America, I think they're kind of experiencing this, for the first time. But growing up in an area where the economic boom is oil and gas, I mean, large amounts of people lose their livelihood all the time. That's a normal thing that happens down there, man. But we've pursued through it. I think we learned our lessons as to what the other end of that spectrum looks like, man. And John and I worked real hard, man, to pursue through that and give our families the lives that we think we deserve. So, it's definitely something to be proud of, man.
Yeah, man. As Bomani Jones says, it's that can't go back.
Can't go back, man. I mean, you can't go back, man.
Go back, not geographically, is can't go back to a different way of life. And so we do whatever we can to make sure we don't.
It's hard, man. It's hard. You gotta and John knows exactly what I'm talking about, but we're fortunate in my household to have two jobs and bonus checks come in all the time. I have a part-time job. As crazy as that may sound, I have a part-time job. And, it's not a job that I have to report to every day, but it is a job that I go to, to make a little bit extra money to pay for things like softball. That way I don't have to dig into my own pocket. If I have a part-time job, there is absolutely no reason why you should not have a side hustle. You'd be surprised how quickly that stacks up. You'd be surprised, truth be told, if I didn't do that, I would find time to go do something like bag groceries or, power clean a driveway or, that's just how I'm built. I talked to a guy that I know through Lawrence softball that got drafted by the Miami Dolphins. He made the practice squad. So practice squad's what, $250 a year, something like that. And he told me flat out, he said, I was in the NFL, wearing a team jersey, getting run, and I was bagging groceries on the weekends.
I mean, that is that can't go back mentality. Like, not my mom made it, I'm gonna live off this and I'm good. Nah, can't go back.
That's what got you there, man. You don't lose those skills. Those skills are always going to be with you because they help you survive, and right now, man, it's the one thing that I see all over the country is we stopped teaching that survival aspect of, what got us to this point.
Right.
And, it's, you can't be comfortable all your life. You're going to have to struggle a little bit, man. And, I'm thankfully we saw it as kids. And I think it kind of put the bigger picture into perspective to us, man, because we realized I ain't going back to this.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I think it's definitely something to that, definitely some hustle mentality there. And, You know, my my son, little John, tells me, "You work too much," and I'm like, "No, I don't. I work enough to make sure that this family is not going to go back."
Yeah.
Um, you know, and it's just one of those things, man, that um, you know, I could easily just work 40 hours a week and knock stuff out, but I'm sitting at 72 right now for the week. And, you know, people go to sleep, I'm up late, might as well make money while I'm doing it. And so, you know, I consider myself grateful or thankful definitely for being in this position to be able to do that, especially during this time. So I don't take that for granted at all. I never, you know, look at it and say, "Oh, well, you know, I'm good. I can just rest on this." Nah, because man, this economy is going to take another downturn, and we got to be ready for that. And so I'm
Yeah.
not working what I'm working right now, um, you know, just for right now. I'm trying to set up something for the future, and I think uh, us as Americans live too much on the right now, and we don't look for the future. And I think largely what we've seen, to bring this back to this stimulus check and things like this, and what we've seen is that America values the idea that you can live recklessly as a country, you can live recklessly as a company, and if you are the right company, then you can just get money, just get bailed out. So you can do whatever you want to do, have bad business practices, you can overextend yourself. We got you. We'll just tack another bit on the debt, and we'll go ahead and get you some money and bail you out. And I think we just as people in general, no matter where you live, I think we need to be, you know, as the Bible says in the Old Testament, we need to be storing up, you know, like ants, so that way once the time comes, the famine comes, we have something available. And so anyway, I'm helping as many people as I can to try to get the message out for uh, you know, financial literacy and things like that. So I'm probably going to be putting out some random videos on my YouTube channel to try to help folks with that, because we just don't get it. I talked to two nieces in a matter of weeks and explained basic financial stuff that's going on, like 401ks or investment stuff, and both of them, without prompting, said, "Why don't they teach us this stuff in school?"
Mm-hmm.
Both of them. And it's just like not even crazy, like overly complex stuff. It's just like the basics of how investing works, stock market, what it actually means, and all that. And it's just one of those things. So anyway.
You know, and listen, man, and saying that too, you know, it's I've had this conversation with people before. I think John's maybe just a little bit more open than I am, but um, you know, you can have these conversations with each other. John and I think, are discreet enough to where, you know, we believe in the value of trust and everything that comes with that. There's things that John and I have done for people that no one knows about.
Yep.
Not even John and I. You know, that is that is between the parties involved. I know that sometimes those conversations are difficult to have. Sometimes they're embarrassing to have. But the first step to a lot of that is admitting that you need help and trying to turn that around into a solution. You know, not, obviously we're not
Yep.
professionals. We don't have all the answers, but you know, we come from the exact same starting point as everyone else, and that's coming from a small town where the economic opportunities are limited. And you know, I think we knew very early on that we wanted to go on and pursue something else. So you know, it's it's all right to have those conversations. I don't look down upon anyone. John doesn't look down upon anyone. You know, we see it as a way of keeping that continued excellence going. And sometimes, man, all it takes is a little spark and everything clicks. It clicks. So, you know, if you want to reach out, man, if you want to have that conversation, if you need help, let us know, man. I mean, that's what we're here for. You know, again, we're
Yep.
not we're not we're not we're not the most successful, we're not the richest, we're not the smartest, but you know, we have a lot of experience with trial and error, and a lot of it has not worked out, but what has worked out has paid dividends, man.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, man. So as we close here, man, I echo that for sure. you know, and I tell people all the time, like I share a lot of